Here we go. All right, here we are. We are live. All right, here we go. Ready, set, and Yup. Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live from United Soccer Coaches Convention here in beautiful Kansas City, Missouri. With me, 99 World Cup winner Saskia Weber, who just had a fantastic panel discussion with some legends on the panel with you as well. So congratulations on
Thank you. I know I was starstruck myself, to be honest with you. It was awesome.
Speaking of starstruck, we got the one and only. We guys, honestly, this guy doesn't need an introduction because I think he's on the show every other week. The one and only Dan Abrahams. Dan, this is your 17th podcast of the day.
I know, and my fee keeps rising as well, so I'm very happy. I think we're up to $10,000 a session now.
I believe so.
Awesome.
Now, what is that in pounds? How does that work? The conversion rate?
That's about 20 quid or something.
20.
You know, it's quite a skewed conversion. No, I think $10,000 is around about £7,000. So.
Oh my God.
I think our first podcast with you was when you were. I mean, people knew who you were. A guy that I worked with at Cal State LA was like, I've read every book that Dan's ever read. Can I say hi to him? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, I mean, I'm not Dan. If he's okay with it, go for it. And then we booked you at that rate. So luckily, it hasn't really. It's appreciated a lot, but for us, we kept it at the normal rate. So we'll stick with what we had in 2019.
That's fun.
I mean, I think one of the great things in regards to Dan is that you are. We joke around and everything like that, but you are really humble. I mean, the fact that you fly over here to talk to us American soccer coaches and tell us a little bit about the game of football. But honestly, it's kind of funny. You say that you feel that the sports psych game, in regards to the mental aspect of the game, has been actually further along here in the States than you feel had been in Europe for a while.
I think so. I mean, I think it's evened up quite a bit. I mean, I think certainly growing up as a massive sports fan and a sports participant, I suppose, in England, in Britain, in the UK, and as a European citizen, which we used to be in Britain. We won't get too political here. You kind of looked at America and there was just incredible insight and foresight and amazing books and literature and stuff coming out from coaches, and you learn from America. And my hero when I became a professional golfer was somebody called Dr. Bob Rotella, who wouldn't be a household name or anything, but if you're a sports psychologist, he was probably the first person to come along and really demystify sports psychology for golfers, but also, I mean, he worked with LeBron James. He was at University of Virginia, so he worked with a lot of competitors over the years, sports people. So look, I've always looked across the pond, across the Atlantic, and thought, you guys have it sussed. Awesome. I think in the last couple of decades, Europe has possibly caught up, certainly in the academic world of things, the sports science world of things, and the academic sports psychology. We're pretty strong in Europe. We're very strong in Great Britain. We kind of punch up above our weight. We've got some, great academics within sports psychology who, if you don't mind me saying, my podcast, they come on my podcast and they're far more intelligent than me. And
just plug it. Just plug the Sports Psych Show.
The Sports Psych Show. And I mean, my first plug today. But no, it's half decent. It's a half decent podcast because I have great guests and they're great academics. And it's really about, we just have to continue to get better at demystifying this, helping players and coaches have practical tools, techniques, philosophies. And I also think there's an element of helping coaches and players just think more critically about what they're doing. What am I doing? How am I doing it? Why am I doing it this way? And there's been a big theme for me this week, presenting yesterday, presenting tomorrow. I'm standing on stage and I'm saying, well, I want to challenge viewpoints. I want to take people out of their comfort zone. Fire back at me by all means, but can we see, whatever you believe, can you perhaps shift that lens? Can you, the power of unbelief, can you see it in a different way? I think coaches need to be critical thinkers. I think that's so important. So there's a theme running through there. So yeah, so I am always honoured to come over here and socialize and talk with and learn from coaches over here. There's lots of Brits over here anyway, but learn from American coaches and learn what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of Brits over there, as we just see one just walk by. As
Hey, fellow Brit.
as we're going through right here. But Saskia, speaking about this, in regards to just what Dan was saying right here, learning from each other, I felt like that the mental part of the panel that you were just on, and you were on a panel recently just in regards to female coaching and representation in coaching and everything like that. And we saw a little bit of a case study, Dan, and Saskia recognized that as well too. We saw that there were a lot of women that did not raise their hands when they were asked if there was any questions, but all the male coaches raised their hands. And Saskia, you said you noticed it right away.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that, unfortunately, it's a stigma that we have to get out of as female coaches. We're so used to taking a back seat, allowing men to lead and lead in the soccer world as well. And so I think that that was a good example of it. And the fact that it was brought up, like, why hasn't a single female coach here asked a question, but all the men have, and they felt confident in asking questions and everything. And as I left, I got pulled over in the bathroom and asked questions in private by females and everything. So I think that it's, change has to come.
Yeah.
And this starts, but it was really interesting, but it's nothing I'm surprised about.
Why is that, do you think?
I don't know if it's confidence. I think the female coach, I mean, they're out there, but I think because it's an evolving thing, we're not as prevalent. We haven't been, the lifespan of a top female coach is a lot shorter than male. So I think that whether it's questioning yourself, if you're asking the right questions, or if you know what you're talking about, or just letting somebody else lead, because that's how it's always been. It's up to us to change that.
Okay. Yeah. And what's if I may ask?
Right now I'm in therapy.
No, this is just why we have Dan on. We have Dan on so that Saskia can have sessions.
Saskia will be far more of an expert here. So I'm just curious. I'm here to learn. And what would suit your lens better? Is it a case of, men, women, we're all human beings, we're all coaches, or do we have to have a conversation and a narrative around this is a socially constructed thing? This is, men have been at historically, men have led and women have followed, if that's what I'm hearing you say. And we need to appreciate that and talk about that and change it that way.
I think it's something we need to identify. We can't just sit here and say, well, now times are changed and women are equal and men are equal and stuff. It's just not. It's not the fact. I mean, men are coaching women's national team players. Women are never coaching men's national team players. I mean, how many women coach Division I men's teams? One, I think, Kim. So I think that this is something that we have to identify in order to change.
Yeah.
And be confident in ourselves as females that we know the sport. Even looking at baseball, the fact the Yankees just hired a female coach, it's amazing. It's amazing. It shouldn't be groundbreaking, but it is.
Yeah.
It is, and we have to get there. There's 3 females in the NFL now, and there's been females in the NBA and everything. We have to break those grounds. It's not just going to change because we say it does.
Yeah.
But it comes from us as well. It comes from us having the confidence as women to go after those jobs, to speak up in a panel, which nobody did, and so on and so forth. So it comes from us as well. It's not just going to happen overnight because I want it to.
Yeah.
Because I say it should.
Yeah. By the way, I like the fact right now, I like this dynamic right here because Saskia now has the microphone and Omar, as a man, is sitting there without the microphone now. So it's a role reversal going on right here. We got a role reversal going on right here.
I mean, one thing I want to say, and again, this is something I'm interested in and curious about and exploring, and I think we all want to say the right thing, but if I was to put to you, I think it's really important that teams have the opportunity to be exposed to cognitive diversity, and that potentially there are, across men and women, there might be cognitive diversity because of a man might not be the same as a woman might not be the same as a man. Would that be something that resonates with you, or am I going down a path here that's sexist? That's a wrong thing to say.
It would need more defining.
Cognitive diversity is in, there's going to be different ways of thinking. There's going to be different ways of thinking across individuals. There's going to be individual differences. There's going to be cultural differences. Might there be different lenses of the world, different viewpoints, different approaches across men and women?
I think yes. I think that there are different approaches and different viewpoints across men and women, but are those learned, or is that a learned behavior from the world, or is that a fundamental, like, if we come down to physical differences, that's something, okay, we can argue from a standpoint, but mental differences, just because you're a man, do you look at the game in a different way and it's a better way than a woman does? And I don't agree with.
So
Bye, Omar.
Sorry, no,
Omar hasn't said a word this entire podcast.
So if I was to borrow from the personality literature, and I'll provide my best understanding here, is that where there has potentially been research that's shown any kind of differences between men and women is in the trait of agreeableness. By and large, men test less agreeable than women.
Okay.
By and large, it's the same, but at the ends, at the margins, men can tend to be more disagreeable than women. Women tend to be more agreeable. Now, let's define agreeableness. It's a social construct, and it could be brought down into compassion and politeness. So we take the compassion. Women tend to be more compassionate than men. Okay, empathy. They can be more empathic. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if there are coaching times. I've certainly experienced coaching whereby I think coaches need to be more empathic at times. And maybe if we were to take that personality literature and look at difference between men and women, which might exist, whether that's a social construction or whether it's a biological thing, that's always going to be up for debate. And that's a controversial debate. But might women be more empathic in times where men aren't? And that's the kind of diversity that I'm talking about.
Right. And what does the sport call for?
Yeah.
Like, what do you need? Do you need the empathy? Do you like? I can introduce you some women that are the opposite. Trust me, and but I think I understand what you're saying.
And it's at the margins. I'm not saying it's.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think okay. So let me say this. I'm here this week, and increasingly my work takes me to a viewpoint where I'm trying to sell in the notion of seeing coaching through a biopsychosocial lens. That yes, we are going to have learning outcomes around technical, tactical, physical. Of course we can. But yesterday I talked a lot about, but we can still have a biopsychosocial lens, so biology, psychology, social. So motivation, concentration, commitment, all the biopsychosocial stuff that you might think of. I'm here drumming that beat because this social historical context of coaching has been male driven.
Right.
And it hasn't been female driven. And I wonder if we might be in a more advanced position today if more women had the opportunity to coach at a higher level, because compassion may have been more of a player.
Agreed.
And other traits as well.
Agreed.
Omar, I want to ask you a question right here. We'll let you speak. We'll finally let you speak right here.
I prefer not to.
No, but I think, obviously
it's a tough topic.
But I think I know it can be a slippery slope, but I want to frame it in this way. You, as somebody who's a social media educator, you've even pointed this out in regards to people like Jill Lloyden at the Keeper Institute, how rare that is, how the majority of the content that you see on social media when it comes to coaching education is male driven. So if systemically, do you think that you as a male coach are automatically kind of ingrained, just expect male coach content because of that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think for me, I understand and the social construct of how people have grown up and how it is male centric. You see a lot of men commentating on women's sports. You don't see a lot of women commentating on men's sports, which I think Doris Burke is one of the best in the NBA. And I love her. And she's she's become famous. She has little things with Drake all the time. So those things as well. And she's very educated. And it's I want to see more of that. So for me, as Sasha was saying, is that, the Yankees and in the NFL as well, you start to see people who are breaking the grounds of that. And then again, it hopefully switches something on to people of I don't really care how I get the knowledge and the information as long as I'm being educated. And for me, I feel like my parents have raised me in the right way. So when I saw Jill's stuff early on, I never once said, "Oh, it's a woman. It's not going to be good." I watched it and I was like, "Oh crap, she played for the national team? Oh damn, okay." So then I would watch her stuff, and like I said today in the panel, she would post things, and then my mind would go crazy and be, "What was she thinking here? Why did she implement this in the next progression? What was she trying to get to?" So I think for me, it's always been completely no man versus woman. It was who can educate me the best, and she's probably one of the best educators, male or female, in the world. So for me, I've never really had. I've been very indifferent about that kind of stuff.
Right. But now the question lies, and I agree with you. Jill is. Would Jill ever get the nod to be the goalkeeper coach for the men's national team? And so this is when I'm getting raw with it. Like, okay, but you can take yourself, and you could probably eventually be looked at to be the women's national team goalkeeper coach. Would it go the other way? Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? And where is that holdback in our society? Because she's an incredible educator. But where is her ceiling? Can she only coach women? Is that it?
There shouldn't be a ceiling.
There shouldn't be. No, there shouldn't.
But Jill, yourself, Saskia, why? What? I'm like, well, why wouldn't, when there's an opportunity, there's a gap in the Premier League for a coaching position? Why wouldn't somebody choose you? Why wouldn't a club choose Jill? It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. I've kind of a 15-year sports psychology career, get the opportunity to work with some of the best players at the best clubs, but I've never in a Premier League worked with a female coach. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Why?
And it doesn't, and I think it's generational as well. One of the coolest questions I used to get asked from my young players when I was with the Bulls and stuff, when I took the UCLA job, was the boys that I used to coach, Anthony and Caden and those guys would say, "Are you coaching the men too? Like, are you the men's goalkeeper coach too?" No, like surprise in that. It was like a legit question. "Oh, you took the UCLA job, but you coach the men?" You know? Because they don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
They look at it, they've been brought up being coached by women.
Yeah.
They don't see it differently. I'm just a good educator to them and everything. I think the old guard doesn't see it that way. And you're absolutely right. Why wouldn't I get a knock on the door to take over that LAFC job? But I was joking. I'm kidding. I was joking, but I was joking with Omar going, "Omar, are you getting a UCLA women's goalkeeping job?" But we can banter about that. But the truth is, I wouldn't be surprised if it went that way. We'd all be surprised if it went the other way.
Yeah.
You know?
Dan, I have a question for you, because Saskia, you just brought up a really good point. Culturally, when it comes to generationally, do you think, from a sports psych, background, is it because people in the past had been raised a different way, so systemically, like their brain formed different thoughts and a different expectations, and these younger kids, these Gen Zs, they see more equality in regards to everything around them, so they have more of a blinder to this?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that the best way I can answer that is, again, let's come back to this term biopsychosocial. Human functioning, human behavior, human decision making is based on the interaction between our biology, our psychology, and our social environment. And so the moment we are born, we're not born without temperaments. In the womb, where our brain is subject to something called synaptogenesis, where our brain is wiring up, and within our genetic coding, we are born with temperaments. We are born with a certain degree of a certain level of emotion, negative emotion and positive emotion. Positive emotion being extroversion, negative emotion being neuroticism, and then that changes over time based on our social environment, our social experiences with our peers, with our parents, what we're exposed to. And so obviously, as generations, as time evolves and the social landscape changes and people see different things and they're exposed to a female coach in a women's coach in basketball and baseball, etc., they see that as something, it's normalized essentially, so it becomes part of your brain wiring. We are essentially, for the most part, our brain wiring. That's the biological side. What we see, our psychology, what we see in our social environment is going to influence our brain wiring. So in many respects, yes, you are absolutely right. And that's where, this is where, in the last few years, as the women's game has taken off globally, or at least expanded and broadened, that needs to build, that we need social pressures to do that. And so it normalizes in our society. It becomes a part of that. we become a part of that. It's just normalized. And so now we've got soccer, women's soccer players who are household names, which has never happened in the UK. And now
they also banned women's soccer.
Well, exactly.
It was
Wait, what?
I mean,
UK was
yeah,
illegal.
And you will get women's soccer?
It was
Yeah.
illegal to play soccer as
Yeah.
a woman.
Yeah.
Until 50 years ago or something,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know the
It was
exact.
something. Yeah, it was
exact
something.
date.
It was illegal.
And so we are subject by
Look at Mike's face.
yeah. We are subject to these social pressures, and it wires our brain. We become our culture, and our culture is us. And so we need to deliberately force these social pressures in order to rewire our brain, in order to normalize our perception of the world around us in terms of, women's soccer is a big deal, and we should make a big deal about it. And there should be things like equal pay. And I don't want to go into subjects I don't know enough about, but that's my thought. And there should be more women coaches in the Premier League, in a multiple range of sports at the top level, coaching men, I believe. And whether you put that under the rubric of, well, we require more cognitive diversity, or somebody says, no, there's no difference between men and women, which is fine. There probably isn't much difference, or any difference at all. We still need to force that socially to happen.
Yeah, I mean, even look at the mistakes that we've made in the NWSL. I mean, with Angel City originally looking to name a male coach. And I mean, sorry to use my language, but the shit hit the fan, because, here we had a new team that was trying to break the glass ceiling of the old guard and the stigma, and to have, them have it come in and the suggestion to have a male coach. Have you gone through what you need to go through to find a proper female coach? At the end of the day, we all want a perfect world where the best person for the job gets the job. But at the same time, when you're equal, when there are equal people for a job, and you have the ability to change a stigma, then I'm sorry, change it and put a female in that job, because it's the only way that other female coaches will look that they can advance further. But if you keep repeating the same pattern, we're not going to change it. And so, yes, we've hired a female coach, but originally they weren't going to do that. And trust me, it did not go well. It did not go down well.
We do need the best person for the job. And I understand that statement, and I understand that philosophy. But perception is distorted and subject to our cognitive biases. And our cognitive biases, as you're alluding to, are influenced by our social environment, our history, our social context. And so subsequently, we do need to make shifts instrumentally on purpose. We have to give, in the case that we're talking about here, women the opportunity in men's sport at all levels, but especially at the top level. Sometimes we've just got to do that deliberately to normalize it, and so that we as a global community, in sport, in soccer, as coaches, as players, start to understand that this isn't something odd or weird. And at the moment, it would feel odd or weird if there's a woman coaching in the Premier League, and it's just like, what? Why am I even thinking that way?
Even identifying that there are women referees that are coaching in the World Cup, the men's World Cup, like, it needs to be normalized, but you have to make the choice to put someone there. Somebody has to start, like the Yankees. Like I said, eventually you want it to be like, okay, it's not news. There is no news about it. Who cares? It's a referee, and that's the end of it. But we have to deliberately put people there to get there. And I agree with you on that.
Yeah. But and the thing, I'm going to sound right like a psychologist here.
This turned into like
No. I was just going to say, Omar and I we can go grab lunch.
Right.
This is good.
I am suffering from so much jet lag right now, and I can't believe I'm even beginning to engage in this fairly highbrow conversation that usually is about 30,000 feet climbing.
By the
above
way,
my
everybody
head.
who thought like this topic was rejection, like we completely pivoted because
yeah,
of this,
I'm like, we've gotten on
because of
Sorry.
what just happened at that
We're
panel over there. So
pivoted. But as I'll try and remember what I was going to say. That we as human beings are subject, as I said, to our cognitive biases. We kind of orient towards something that is strange in our environment. We pay attention to that. I don't know where I was going to go with that point. I was going to say something really profound, I think. At least I think I was going to say something
It's still
profound.
30,000
But
feet in the air.
Yeah, you said something, Saskia, that hit me, and I can't remember what it was. So I'm jet lagged. I apologize. It was going to be brilliant. It was going to be a world-changing moment.
I love it.
Not.
I do want to ask Omar this, and then should we move on to? Should we do a little bit of rejection? Okay. Last thing, Omar, before we move on from this talk, which is obviously a Pandora's box that we've opened that could go on for for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I love, Dan, what you said about cognitive diversity, because I think that is something that a lot of people don't look at when they talk about representation. Omar, they think representation, they think about appearance, physical appearance, gender, that sort of thing. They don't think about different points of view, different mindsets. You yourself, as a young, I'll still call you a young coach, even though you're becoming a high-level coach now.
You're becoming a man.
You're becoming a man.
You're growing up.
Do you feel that you've become a better coach because you've had more cognitive diversity, because you've had coaches from different backgrounds who've had different experiences, whether they're men, women, from South America, from the United States, from England, or whatever, than you had when, let's just say, your background had been traditionally from one group of people and that point of view only?
I mean, yeah, I think I talk about it in the academy days when I was at the Galaxy. I had a goalkeeper coach who was, very Americanized, like England style, keep everything in the bubble, make sure the technique is right and game realistic. So I was exposed to that. And then I think that's how I saw the world, and that's how I saw the game. And then as I started getting into, again, speaking with people like Jill Loyden, and then I started realizing, oh, there's more to the game than just being on the field. Speaking with people like Dan, they're like, you actually have to help people get, sure. And Susk as well. But realizing that everybody has explored their own journey as a coach, and then picking little bits and pieces off that, and the psyche as well. I think one thing, I just reposted it a few days ago, but one thing you told me was, like, a lot of coaches in the U.S. or around the world think that the technical execution was the reason why a goalkeeper conceded a goal. But have you ever thought about, like, their mental state in that moment, which didn't allow them to be proficient and execute that technique in the right way? So again, I say Jill a lot because she does a lot of work with her goalkeeper coaches and having them develop their own identity and their I guess, understanding of the social psyche of the player that they're coaching. So I think, again, so to answer your question, Mike, yes, male, female, to me, I don't care. As long as I get valuable information, I'll internalize that and then try to vocalize it to my kids. But I've never, again, to everybody, like, I've never really seen it male or female, and I know the world does. So for me, I know it's not my experience, but I know it exists. So I really do hope that social stigmas start to change. But again, I could be one of the people who tries to change that as well. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think it's just everybody has that. Yeah.
Go ahead,
just to say something briefly on cognitive diversity, which I just think is so important amongst coaching teams. One thing I always find that I don't want to be too specific here because I don't want to pinpoint anybody or any coaching team, but I think one of the most important things at any level is, if you've got a group of coaches at a college or in a club or whatever, is having that cognitive diversity. And what I see too much, again, I'm going to go back to Premier League or whatever, is that I do think sometimes those managers in the Premier League can tend to pick people where there's been a mistake. They've picked people like themselves, like who think sort of like-minded thinkers. And that's a problem, because you've got nobody there to challenge you. You've got nobody there to see the world through a different lens. And that's a big problem.
It's a huge problem because you have 30 people that are seeing the world through different lenses, as far as the players go.
Yeah.
And if you can add people to that identify with different groups of those individuals as players, then you can have a better, well-rounded team. If you want every single one of your players and all your coaches look through the same lens, then you're never going to identify with those players as a whole.
Yeah.
Or individually.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of cognitive diversity, we actually have a question in the crowd right now from a young goalkeeper, Aubrey McGlynn. Aubrey, first off, shout out on the call up. That's fantastic at such a young age. That's really cool. So we're excited for you for that. And her question is, I'm going to pop it up right here. She goes, what advice do you have for youth keepers and the pressure that others try to apply to them during big games?
I'll start it with a very bland comment, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper. So focus on yourself. Focus on. Sorry, what was the question? It was the impact that.
Yeah. What advice do you have for youth keepers and the pressure that others apply to them during big games? Others try to apply to them during big games.
Focus on yourself, on being the best individual you can be and the best teammate you can be. How do you do that? For me, you need to break down your game and have some specific tasks. You need to be task oriented out there. you need to have 2 or 3 things, or between 1 and 3 things that you're going to focus on doing and getting right, irrespective of the communication around you towards you. Help yourself to focus on you by breaking down your game. You've got a bunch of responsibilities in your role as a goalkeeper. Pick 1, 2, 3 things that you're going to focus on. When if anybody gets negative, so it could be a technical thing, it could be a tactical thing, it could be a physical thing, it can be a mental thing, it can be a strength you want to magnify, it might be a coaching point that's been given to you by your coach. It's got to be something that's specific, it's got to be something that's controllable, it's got to be something that's positive. And that gives you, if you go out there and you can write it on your glove, okay, you could write it on your forearm. It gives you something to focus on, that when somebody gets negative with you or something in the game happens that creates an unhelpful or negative emotion within inside of you, if you experience something that raises your anxiety levels, you can come back to. You've got to have specific tasks to focus on, so you can turn down the volume of unhelpful noise around you. And one of the potentially best things that you can do is, if you've got defenders around you who tend to be negative with you, just tell them what to communicate to you in the heat of battle. Tell them what to do. Tell them what one of those plays is that you've chosen, one of those tasks. I call them plays. So this is basically a technique I call a match script. And I talk about this in my first book, Soccer Tough, which is available on Amazon.
Promo code inside the 18 guest now.
And Gareth Bale has just come out and said it changed his life as well. So just saying.
Saw that, yeah.
And I know a lot of goalkeepers have picked that book up and found it to be useful. So occasionally some people listen to me, and so it's called a match script, and it's just about breaking down your game into specific tasks. But that's such an important thing to do, because it gives you it gives your brain something to focus on when you need it. Okay, sounds like a really obvious thing, but the skill is to break it down into something that's specific, controllable, and positive. Keeping a clean sheet isn't specific, controllable, and positive. Okay, we want something more. What's going to help you to keep a clean sheet? What's going to help you to get your footwork right, your handling right? So work with your coach on a match script, so that when things are unhelpful, when things might make you feel negative, that's useful to come back to. And in psychology, we call that being task focused rather than overly ego focused.
No,
I think,
go ahead.
To add to that, I think it's everything you're saying is amazing, and I think it's just the patience to have that be not even just applied, but for it to actually take fruition and become part of your identity.
Yeah.
And I think, again, we've probably said it so many times, that the pressure from the outside world of this microwave generation of everything has to be done, and you have to be this complete goalkeeper by the age of 13, 14, 15. And so everyone becomes or there's a Monday night quarterback or Monday morning quarterback, and see things, in hindsight, when in reality, this goalkeeper needs that time and that space to identify what they want to become. Like you said, find those fundamental and foundational principles that they can always compartmentalize what they're hearing and then come back to. And I think just you need patience for that. And I think we need to provide them that safe space to do that.
Yeah. I want to bring this up. This is actually really interesting where we're talking about in regards to learned behavior. There's actually a question in the comments section right here. And Saskia, I think you can definitely, speak about this right here. This is from Nancy Lamakia. And Dan, I would love your from a sports psych standpoint. She goes, why the mandatory 6-foot height requirement when recruiting female professional goalies?
I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
So she says, why would somebody put a mandatory 6-foot height requirement when recruiting female professional goalkeepers?
We just talked about this on the panel. I wish you could have been there. And Amy had just brought this up and everything. There shouldn't be a height restriction, period. That in my opinion means that whoever's coaching your goalkeepers doesn't know how to work with with positioning, with everything like that. Your 6-foot goalkeeper might be good at getting crosses or anything there, but they might be horrible at getting down to the ground. So getting down to the ground, it's how you train that person and positioning. I will be honest with you, to be blunt, a 5'2" goalkeeper, there's going to be some issues. Okay, there are going to be some problems. Am I going to put a height restriction on it? No. Maybe you have a 45-inch vertical. I don't know, but which would be amazing. I mean, Spud Webb, look at him. I mean, I don't know if you guys are kind of young for that, but
I remember Spud Webb.
He won the dunk contest in the NBA. But I think to put a restriction, I think is ridiculous. And I think you have to look at who's doing that. So I think that's a blanket statement. I would tell you right now, I've never put a restriction on it. Our second goalkeeper, not this past year, but the year before at UCLA was 5'2", but no, 5'5". Had great positioning, dealt with crosses and high balls and everything incredibly well. And she played like she was 6 feet. Where I have had goalkeepers that are 6 feet tall that can't get across. Their timing is horrible. Their positioning is horrible. So to say that somebody's putting that stigma or putting that requirement, I don't think that's a blanket statement. I think you have to look at who is doing it and why. And that coach has some issues. Sorry, I'm being honest.
Did you want to say something, Omar?
Yeah, no, I think again, to your point, that's huge. Of what are your, I can't find the word in my head, but it's essentially what are your qualities that make up for the lack of. And I think I've worked with some goalkeepers who will complain about their height, but are terrible at taking crosses, terrible with their feet, terrible at tactical awareness, don't come off their line high enough to defend behind the back line. So it's like don't get caught up with the idea that if somebody has a height requirement, that's it. At the end of the day, if I work with you and I say, yeah, your height's not there, but all the other pieces around you really make up for that lack of height, for me, it's like that's what I want. I don't want a goalkeeper who doesn't know what to do with their height. And I think that to me it means more than the height. But again, as I said, understand who's saying it. And if that's the profile that they're getting and that's the only person they're going to try and recruit, maybe not go to that school, go somewhere else where I think you'll be valued. You don't want to go there just so you say you're a part of that school with that badge and then sit on the bench. Like there's no reason for that. And I think that's a discussion you got to have with yourself and your parents.
Dan, I know from the mental side that you've worked with a lot of goalkeepers from all different shapes and sizes. Is this a conversation that you've had with any of them?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm not a goalkeeping coach, so you guys have forgotten more about goalkeeping than I'll ever know. But listening in to what Saskia's saying, what Omar's saying there, what I'm hearing is, Saskia, you mentioned positioning, and I know on this podcast we've talked a lot about the cognitive, the game intelligence side of things, and it's continuing to beat the drum that, soccer and sports like team invasion sports like basketball, etc. Look, there's always going to be physical challenges in as much as I'm not going to beat Usain Bolt in 100 meters. There are people who are, as you say, who might be construed on the smaller side, who may that physical element might prove to be a limitation. But I do think as coaches, we do need to adopt what can we do mentality combined with an understanding of what is the logic of the game.
Right.
That's something we underestimate. Soccer comes loaded. Well, what's the logic of the game? And then what's our principles of play? And then what's our game models? Well, if you go back to the logic of the game is about the relationship between space, ball, and player, which, it's the cognitive side. It's about anticipation and decision-making, pattern recognition in the middle of that, which influence positioning. So once you start to see the game in that respect, a little bit more like a game of chess,
exactly.
Well, then with chess, we need intelligence and not less emphasis on the physical side, without obviously being unrealistic about maybe if I'm intelligent and I'm 6'2", that's probably going to work in my favor.
Yes, exactly.
But if there's a 5'4", if somebody's 5'4" and wants to be the best goalkeeper in the world, what can we do? What can we do here?
That's right.
Yeah, and I love, Omar, what you said in regards to just the fact of like using an excuse, like an uncontrollable, using it as an excuse on why you can't get to a certain level. Dan, like, is there any advice that you have to anybody who's started recognizing those types of thought patterns coming in them, that they're using their uncontrollables as reasons why they can't succeed?
I think if I understand your question correctly,
I wish I understood my question correctly.
No. It was probably a fine question, but as I mentioned earlier, I am in a haze of jet lag.
We all.
It's my very small brain, which is diminishing by the second. Perhaps missed some words there, but which is never great when you're on a podcast. I would say you've got to try and be You've got to try and be a great student of the game and a student of your game. And so when somebody comes along and is ultra critical about what you're doing, or you're going through tough times or whatever like that, coming back to Omar's patience there, just be a student of the game and be a student of your game and break things down into tasks and be curious. You don't have to play well all the time. You don't have to always train really well. It's a case of going in and training intelligently, playing intelligently, understanding and accepting that you're going to have good days and bad days, having great frameworks in place, co-creating solutions with your coach if you have the opportunity, irrespective of how young you are. For me, that can silence the noise around you. Please excuse me if I missed your question, but did I kind of grasp it?
Yes, I think
did.
again, one thing that I've been trying to implement more is, as a coach, is you have to expect that the goalkeeper is not going to be perfect. And then you said have a script ready for when that when that occurs.
Yeah.
And I think even just doing obviously this past season, when Las Vegas, our goalkeeper was really good with his feet, found passes, can exploit space, manipulate what's in front of him. And there was a game where he missed obvious passes that his identity is so attached to that he kept trying it, and it wouldn't work. So I told him, I said, look, at halftime, I said, your A stuff, the block A is not working. So what does your block be? He's like, well, I could put the ball into into bigger, deeper spaces and still give us a chance by trying to target somebody. I was like, well, still, let's try that a few times. Let's get your confidence back by doing something that you're comfortable with.
Yep.
And then when the A starts opening up again, then we go back to the A. And I think, again, to say patience, I think you have to have, nothing's ever going to be bulletproof in terms of having a plan, but understanding and expecting and knowing that you will fail and there's going to be imperfect moments. To be, okay, I have clarity because I've already kind of sat in those thoughts of how it would feel. And I've come up with, again, your game face. I wouldn't say that, but like something with your game face of like,
Coach
I know.
face.
Huh?
Coach face?
No, for me, yeah, but
Okay.
for players, he talks about game face. Shout out to, was it Gareth Bale or Garrett Bale?
Gareth.
Oh, okay, sure. I just want to make sure it wasn't
Yeah,
some other guy using
Just
that name.
wasn't some random person. Yeah.
You're like Gareth Bale said that, and you're like Gareth. Gareth
No, I know. I
Bale.
was messing with. I
The
thought it was.
famous Gareth Bale.
Gareth-
That would be quite cunning. That would be awesome.
That was what I was trying. I was trying to make a joke about that, but I think it was.
It's like, yeah.
Gareth Bale's actually over there right now.
This geezer, Joe Messi. He really loves my work, old Joe. But he's called Joe Messi. So.
But I hope that makes sense. But I think, yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Peter Ronaldo. What I love about what you said there is what you're doing is you're helping a player have a very sophisticated relationship with performance to help them become a better competitor. And I think that's so much of my work at the very highest level is helping players actually have a more sophisticated relationship with performance around you're not going to go out there all the time and be 8, 9, 10 out of 10 or have your A game, as you might call it. Okay, there's going to be times, this comes under the rubric of mental contrasting. What am I going to do if it goes wrong? What am I going to do if I feel a bit flat, lethargic, worried, doubting, anxious, dropping confidence? What if my footwork isn't quite there? What if my handling isn't quite there? What if it's not going so well? What am I going to do? So that's the B or the C game or whatever. How am I going to approach that? And I think that's a conversation players can have with themselves. They're kind of scared to have that because they think that, oh, well, I'm engaging in negative thinking. And it's absolutely not. It's actually intelligent thinking. It's thoroughly preparing for the game. Just because on Tuesday you're having a conversation with yourself around what is my strategy for my B game or my C game here? Or my 6 out of 10 game. What am I going to do? That doesn't mean that you're going to do it on a Saturday. Yeah. You're just being intelligent about it. And I think we more need those kind of sophisticated approaches and conversations with players.
Yeah, no.
I know you got a hard stop at 12.
Yeah.
But some of the best advice I ever got from a coach was you have to expect your back line, your 6, they're going to mess up. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to play you a ball you didn't want. They're going to put you into tough situations. Expect that that's going to happen. And now you talk about kind of understanding yourself in a sophisticated way. Reverse engineer that and be like, Susk, look, I had a friend who told me this all the time. But he's like, Susk, the other day there were some moments where I was yelling at you, and I know it'll continue to happen. Like, what's the best way to communicate?
I love this acting exercise here too. This is great.
Then Susk,
I would tell you that yelling at me is not going to work.
Okay.
Then discussion. I'm like, you can yell all you want. I'm just going to tune you in and tune you out. We can have a discussion about it. You can come and talk to me, whether it's a dead ball situation, something like that. Like, hey, Sask, you need to come off your line more or something like that. You're not, but if you're going to scream at me, I'm not going to hear you.
And so
I would have to tell you that.
And that's where, again, the expectation that that's going to happen and there's a solution off the field where I can say, Sasuke, well, I understand that. So now for me, when she messes up or there's a situation where I can get on her, she's already beaten herself up. But now that I have that knowledge and that understanding, now I know how to actually skew my vocabulary or my language or the time of when I do it. And I think, again, that is just, it helps you on so many levels. And if you do that with your teammates, imagine doing that with yourself.
And imagine as a coach doing it with all your players. And that, you know, I know that, and you handle your goalkeepers, everybody reacts differently. You know, I'm not going to sit in the corner and scream and yell at Hannah. I coach a certain way, and I'm not going to change the way I coach because she likes to be yelled at and it motivates her. But we're going to find a medium ground there, and how to the triggers that I can find to motivate her that are different than the triggers to motivate Lauren.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's being, what I'm hearing here is just being a great biopsychosocial coach. Again, it's, you're going to have learning outcomes here, but you're doing it through the lens of understanding Saskia's, you know, her functioning, her behaviors, her decision making, her understanding is through the lens of biopsychosocial. Who is she as a person? Now you found out this great information. Right now you can tailor your communication alongside everything else that you do, you know, with regard to your coaching.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you one more question? So I know you got a hard start.
Yeah. Please, sir.
It's so fascinating to me because like I was just thinking about how you were bringing up, and again you were bringing up cognitive diversity.
Yeah.
I've recognized a fact that I think is very difficult. We had this conversation. I think I forgot who it was with yesterday, but we were talking about the fact that I'll get a key player come into my environment who's never been in an environment with a coach like myself before, and they've never had that cognitive diversity, and their learned behavior is specific to the only coaches they've ever had before. And then they don't know how to react to me because I'm so completely the opposite of what they're used to.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any advice for me on how to get through to this player?
Yeah, really good question. And obviously it's understanding that players who come to you have history. You know, skills have history, and their history will be filled with different experiences from different coaches. And I think that's where you as a coach potentially have to be curious and strive to be as flexible and as adaptable as you can possibly be. But also, you know, as a coach, you're entitled to see the relationship as a, you know, it's a transformational relationship, and what you want it to be, and so it's having better conversations around, okay, I understand and appreciate that this is where you're coming from, and these are experiences you've had. I also like to go about it like this, and this is why I'm doing this in this way. You know, if I say this to you, what does this mean to you? You know, what's your thoughts on that? If you can explain, you know, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and why you're doing it in that way, then you're being an autonomy supportive coaching. You're explaining to the person why you're doing what you're doing.
It may or may not have been your presentation yesterday. So.
Well, but you have to, and I think you have to remember it's a gray area, goalkeeping, and they're coming from another coach, and it's not to say that their coaching style was wrong. You know, and if you can have an open line of communication and discuss it with that player, don't just put them in a drill and then trying to do it. Let them feel comfortable enough with you to talk to you and say, you know, the last coach, he told me to do it this way, or she told me to do it this way, but you're telling me I'm confused. So let's talk about it. Let's find a middle ground. Let's see what works best for you, because the other way might work better for that keeper. Like the spin move to get up as opposed to the kick up, you know, like.
But I'll be honest, like I think a lot of kids, and Dan, I don't know if you can speak to this in regards to just, you know, child psychology. They're afraid to question authority.
Yeah, but it's not questioning authority. You have to make yourself as an individual open enough to talk, that they feel comfortable enough to talk to you. They're not questioning your authority, but they have to be allowed to ask questions. And there's a big difference there. They're not saying, well, Mike, you're wrong, and that my other coach is right. It's like, if they feel comfortable enough with you, that they're confused and you can talk about it, that's why you're there. You're there to educate. You're also there to learn as well. Yeah. You know,
your coach behaviors are going to influence the environment that you're creating, the coaching environment that you're creating. You're going to influence that child's perception of the world around them when they're, you know, in your company. And so you've probably got to be able to adapt and tailor your coaching behaviors accordingly.
Yeah. Now, I mean, by the way, I want everyone out there to see, I'm not like some authoritarian coach. Like, I think so I don't want anyone to be like this. He's running this environment where like people are afraid to ask questions. No, it's the opposite. I was like, I'm silly. And sometimes I've been like, I'm very disciplined environment.
But
you know.
what you're saying, and building on that point, and coming back to something you said there, Saskia, about coaching in the grey. I mean, it's not just goalkeeping coaching; it's sport, and it's sports coaching, and it's a social science, and it's an art, and there's empirical evidence as to strong ways to coach, but there is no truth as such. And in every single activity, in every single session, is kind of a mini experiment as a coach. If you're a good critical thinker and you have the capacity to reflect back on your coaching practice in terms of what you did in an activity and the session as a whole, which I would suggest that ambitious coaches do that, then there's no truth. And these are just experiments, and you're constantly thinking about how that went and how it could have gone better. And you do have to give yourself permission to get it wrong. And you do have to give yourself permission for it to be chaotic. And you do have to give yourself permission to say the wrong thing at certain times. And there's always going to be times in your coaching career where, or there's going to be players that you come across that it doesn't quite connect, and it's very difficult to connect with that player. That's okay. That's your privilege and your burden. That's the difficulty of coaching. And if we go into coaching and say, there's these truths and it must be this way, and there's always going to be objective evidence, that's absolutely fine. But how that objective evidence is treated is subjective. And so we have to be demanding on ourselves as coaches. We have to be critical on ourselves as coaches, but we also have to be patient with ourselves as coaches, and we have to be kind on ourselves as coaches. We're not going to get it right all the time, especially with relationships, because relationships are complicated and people are complex, and that's what I'd have to say about that.
Omar, anything you want to add before we can release Dan from the hostage of the Inside the 18 podcast booth?
I do kind of claustrophobic in this hostage environment.
No, I think again the last thing I think Mike told me this way back in the day. He was like, you just need repetitions, and he was like, you're still a young coach, and you might think highly of yourself, but you haven't had the repetitions enough to justify what's up here yet. You got to marry the two, and the only way you get to where you think you should be is the repetitions. And I think to anything you do, repetition, be patient, and keep repeating it until you find what you feel comfortable with.
Nice. Very great point. Well, Dan, honestly, this has always been a treat. I mean, it's so awesome that we finally get to do it in person with all of us right here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
First time.
A reunion.
It's only been
Awesome.
17 years. And then we were joking around and said, like, guys, don't worry. If you missed this episode with Dan, don't worry. He'll be back probably in a couple weeks. So
I am now part owner of this podcast. I have to. I'll bring down my fee. So it's.
Anything you want to plug? Do you have any more presentations here?
So I'm presenting tomorrow, if anybody's around, at 1:30 in some big room down the corridor here. And I'm going to be challenging people's view on the notion of control, self-control, perhaps the idea of I think there is this pervasive narrative around you can control your attitude, effort, and energy. And I'm going to challenge that slightly. I'm not going to suggest that what I'm saying is true. I'm just going to challenge it and suggest that actually characteristics and these kind of characteristics are also competencies and skills, and that these can be developed, and part of coaching practice and in coaching environment need to account for the development of things like attitude, effort, and energy. So that's kind of what I'm going to be going on about tomorrow. In terms of me, danabrahams.com is my website. I have 3 Twitter accounts. The most important one is at danabrahams77. I have my own podcast, which is half as good as yours, which is the Sports Site Show. I have Facebook, which is at Dan Abrahams Soccer. Instagram, which is at Dan Abrahams Sport. And my books are Soccer Tough, Soccer Tough 2, Soccer Brain, and Golf Tough if you're a golfer. And that's me out.
Look at that, guys. And obviously, guys, if you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, contact at insidethe18media.com or at Goalkeeper Podcast. By the way, shout out to everybody who's been downloading the Union. Wow, we just went on Tuesday. We just went officially launched, and it's a free app, guys. Go out there. Go on the forum. If you have questions and you want to connect with other like-minded individuals in regards to sports psych, in regards to coaching education, nutrition, lifestyle, whatever it is, whatever pillar it is that you want to do, go on there, guys. You don't have to wait for Omar to approve you or anything like that. Go on there, start commenting, start interacting with each other. Dan, always a pleasure. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.